I never planned to keep my success a secret. Life just worked out that way. Growing up in Singapore, my parents taught me the value of hard work and education. "Emily, knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you," my father would say as he drove his taxi late into the night to fund my studies. My mother worked 2 jobs, and together they made sure I had everything I needed to excel. Their sacrifice paid off. I graduated top of my class in finance and landed a position at one of Asia's largest banks. By 28, I was the youngest division head in the bank's history, managing over $50 billion in corporate loans. But few knew this side of me. I met James at my friend's small cafe where I loved to work on weekends, helping out just to stay grounded. He walked in one rainy morning, ordered a latte, and smiled when I drew a little heart in the foam. "This is the best coffee I've had in months," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The secret is making it with care," I replied, wiping down the counter. He came back every weekend after that. We talked about everything: his work as an architect, his dreams of designing sustainable buildings, his close relationship with his family. I found myself looking forward to our conversations, enjoying how he saw me for who I was, not what I owned. When he finally asked me out, I said yes without hesitation. Our first date was at a humble hawker center, sharing plates of char kway teow and laughing about nothing in particular. I fell in love with his kindness, his integrity, and how he treated everyone with respect, regardless of their status. "My family's a bit traditional," he warned me before our first dinner with them. "They can be judgmental about status and career." "Don't worry," I assured him, "I can handle it." I wasn't prepared for Richard Chen, James's father. A self-made real estate tycoon, he dominated every room he entered. His wife, Helen, was equally intimidating in her designer clothes and perfectly coiffed hair. James's sister, Victoria, took after their mother, down to her dismissive glance when I mentioned working at a cafe. "A cafe?" Richard's voice boomed across the dinner table. "James, I thought you said she went to university." "She did, Dad. Emily has a degree in—" Clearly not putting it to good use, Richard interrupted. "In this family, we believe in ambition, excellence, not serving coffee." I saw James's face redden, but he stayed silent. Helen touched her pearl necklace, a habit I learned meant she was about to deliver a carefully crafted insult. "Dear, perhaps you could help Emily find a more suitable position. The cleaning company we use is always hiring." Victoria snickered. "At least she'd have health insurance." I maintained my composure, years of high-stakes negotiations serving me well. "I enjoy my current work, but thank you for your concern." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of subtle digs and patronizing advice. James apologized profusely on the drive home. "They'll come around," he promised. "They just need time to know you." But they didn't. Over the next year, as James and I grew closer, his family's disdain only intensified. Every family gathering became an exercise in endurance. Richard never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of my humble station. Helen orchestrated seating arrangements to keep me far from important guests. Victoria openly suggested James find someone more appropriate. When James proposed, their reaction was predictable. "A cafe worker," Richard exploded. "Have you lost your mind?" "Dad, I love her." James stood firm. "Love won't maintain our family standing," Richard shot back. "If you marry her, don't expect any support from me." But James chose me. We had a small, beautiful wedding, without his family present. Months passed. I continued my weekend cafe shifts, finding peace in the simple work while managing billion-dollar deals during the week. James respected my choice to keep my career private, understanding my need to be loved for myself, not my position. Then came the annual Chen family reunion. "We have to go," James insisted. "They're still family." I agreed, hoping time had softened their hearts. I was wrong. The reunion was held at Richard's mansion, a sprawling estate that screamed old money. The moment we arrived, I felt the familiar weight of judgmental stares. "Oh, the cafe girl still hasn't found a real job." Victoria's voice carried across the garden. How persistent. Richard gathered everyone for his annual family address, champagne flowing freely as he boasted about the family's achievements. Then he spotted us. "Ah, James, come, tell everyone about your new project." His eyes slid past me. "And your wife can serve drinks. It's what she's good at, yes." Laughter rippled through the crowd. James opened his mouth to protest, but before he could speak, a commotion erupted near the house. Richard's secretary came running out, face pale. "Mr. Chen, urgent call from the bank." "Not now," Richard waved her off. "We're celebrating." "Sir, it's about the emergency loans." "They're denied." Richard's smile faltered. "Impossible. I spoke with the division head yesterday." "No, sir. The new CEO is reviewing all major loans personally. They're requesting a meeting tomorrow." I felt my phone vibrate, my own secretary calling. I knew what this was about. Richard's company had been flagged for suspicious accounting, and as CEO of the corporate banking division, I had ordered a complete audit. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. "Excuse me," I said quietly, stepping away from the crowd to take my call. "Ma'am," my secretary whispered, "Chen Development's financials are worse than we thought. The audit shows systematic misrepresentation of assets." "Send me the files," I replied. "I'll review them tonight." When I returned, Richard was in full crisis mode. His face had lost its usual smugness, replaced by barely concealed panic. He was barking orders into his phone while Helen hovered nearby, wringing her perfectly manicured hands. Victoria sidled up to me, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Looks like Daddy's company is having issues. Not that you understand business matters. More champagne?" I smiled politely. "No, thank you. But I do have a question. How's your position at your father's company?" She preened. "I'm Executive Vice President of Operations." "Interesting. And what exactly do you do?" Her smile faltered. "I oversee things. Important things. Like the shell companies in the Cayman Islands." Victoria's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Several heads turned our way. "I don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "The ones hiding your father's debt? Or perhaps the inflated property valuations?" Before she could respond, Richard's voice boomed across the garden. "Everyone, party's over. Family emergency." As guests began to leave, Richard pulled James aside. "Son, I need your help. The bank, they're being unreasonable. Your architecture firm has good relationships with other banks, yes." James looked uncomfortable. "Dad, we're just a small firm. We don't handle those kinds of loans." "Useless," Richard exploded. "Just like your choice in wife. If I lose this company, it's on your head for bringing bad luck into this family." That was enough. I stepped forward, my phone in hand. "Mr. Chen, I believe we have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. He barely glanced at me. "This doesn't concern you, coffee girl." "Actually, it does." I opened my banking app, displaying my executive profile. "I'm the CEO you'll be meeting." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and horror. Helen's pearl necklace clattered to the ground. Victoria looked like she might faint. "That's impossible," Richard stammered. "Emily Chen, CEO of Corporate Banking Division, Singapore United Bank," I stated calmly. "Your loan applications crossed my desk last week. The irregularities were concerning." James stared at me, mouth agape. "Emily? All this time?" "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I own," I explained softly. "You gave me that gift. Your family, not so much." Richard suddenly straightened, his businessman instincts kicking in. "Well, this is wonderful news. We're all family here. Surely we can work something out." "Family?" I echoed. "Like when you called me a gold digger at our wedding reception. Or when you told your business associates that James married beneath his station." Helen stepped forward, arms outstretched. "Darling, we were just protecting our son. Surely you understand." "I understand perfectly. You judged me, humiliated me, and treated me like dirt because you thought I was beneath you. Now you want my help." Victoria attempted damage control. "Emily, sweetie, we were just teasing. It was all in good fun." I turned to James. "Did you know about your sister's role in the company?" He shook his head. "She said she was handling operations. She's been helping your father hide debt and inflate assets. The audit shows years of financial manipulation." Richard's face turned purple. "Now see here, you can't just." "I can and I will," I interrupted. "Tomorrow's meeting isn't about loans. It's about fraud investigation." The color drained from his face. "You wouldn't dare. We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Let me share some wisdom from my father, the taxi driver you mocked at my wedding. He taught me that true family supports you, believes in you, and loves you regardless of your status. You've done none of those things. I took James's hand. The authorities will be contacting you tomorrow. I suggest you get your lawyers ready. As we turned to leave, Helen called out desperately, "Wait, what about Victoria? She was just following orders." I paused at the door. Actions have consequences, Helen. Victoria chose to participate in fraud. She'll face the same investigation as everyone else. The drive home was silent. Finally, James spoke. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have treated me differently if you knew?" He thought for a moment. "No, I fell in love with you, not your job." "That's why I fell in love with you too." I squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry for keeping this from you. I just needed to know our love was real." "What happens now?" I sighed. "Your father's company will be investigated. With the evidence we have, there will likely be criminal charges. Victoria too, if she's implicated. And us. That depends. Can you handle being married to a woman who makes more than your entire family combined?" James laughed, the tension breaking. "I think I'll manage, but no more secrets." "No more secrets," I promised. The next morning, the Chen family empire began to crumble. Richard arrived at my office precisely at 9 a.m., flanked by his lawyers. Gone was the arrogant tycoon. In his place sat a man who finally realized he wasn't the most powerful person in the room. The audit revealed systematic fraud spanning 5 years, I stated, sliding the report across my desk. "Falsified valuations, hidden debts, shell companies. It's all here." "We can explain," his lawyer began. "No need. The evidence has been forwarded to the authorities." Richard leaned forward. "Emily, please, think about what this will do to the family name. Like you thought about my reputation when you told everyone I was a gold digger?" Before he could respond, my secretary interrupted. "Ma'am, the police are here." What followed was a media circus. Chen Development CEO arrested for fraud splashed across headlines. Victoria was taken into custody next, her designer handbag clutched to her chest as officers led her away. Helen had a very public breakdown at the country club. James stood by me through it all, though I knew it pained him to see his family fall apart. "They did this to themselves," he said one evening as we watched the news coverage. "You just exposed the truth." Weeks turned into months. The investigation uncovered more than even I had suspected. Richard had been running a complex scheme, using inflated property valuations to secure loans, then channeling the money through shell companies. Victoria had helped coordinate the fraud, her executive position nothing more than a front. The trial was swift. Richard and Victoria were both sentenced to prison. 8 years for him, 5 for her. Helen was spared criminal charges but lost everything in the asset forfeitures. One day, as autumn painted Singapore's gardens in golden hues, Helen appeared at my office. "I know I have no right to be here," she began, her designer clothes replaced by simple cotton. "But I need to say something." I gestured for her to continue. "I was wrong about you. So terribly wrong." Tears filled her eyes. "We judged you because we thought wealth and status were everything. Now I'm alone, living in a small apartment, working as a sales clerk, and I finally understand." "Understand what?" "That character matters more than cash. You were kind to us even when we were cruel. You could have destroyed us completely, but you let the law take its course. That's real class." I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. "What do you want, Helen?" "A chance. Not to be close. I know I don't deserve that. But to apologize to you and James. To try to be better." 6 months later, we hosted a small dinner party. Helen came bringing homemade dumplings, a skill she'd learned in her new life. She was different now, humbler, more genuine. James was healing too, visiting his father and sister in prison, working through years of family dysfunction. As for me, I kept my weekend shifts at the cafe, not because I needed to hide anymore, but because I loved the simplicity of making someone's day better with a perfect cup of coffee. One morning, a young woman came in, looking defeated. "Rough day?" I asked, drawing a heart in her latte foam. "My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough," she sighed. "Wrong background, wrong job." I smiled, remembering where my own journey began. "Let me tell you a story about family, pride, and what really matters in the end. Life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons, Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what truly matters. Richard and Victoria learned this in prison. Helen learned it through humility, and I learned that being true to yourself is worth more than all the wealth in the world. James and I are expecting our first child now. We've decided to name her Grace, a reminder that sometimes the hardest situations deserve a measure of mercy. Helen is excited to be a grandmother, and even Richard, through his prison letters, seems to be reflecting on what kind of legacy he really wants to leave. The cafe still stands, a humble reminder of where our story began. Sometimes customers recognize me, the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends. They often ask why I still do it. My answer is simple. Every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day better, and at the end of our lives, isn't that what matters most? They usually smile, understanding or not. But I know my truth. Success isn't about power or revenge or even proving others wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, showing kindness even when it's not deserved, and remembering that everyone, even those who hurt us, deserves a chance at redemption. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of hope. James will join me soon, as he does every weekend. Helen might stop by with her dumplings. Life isn't perfect, but it's real and rich with lessons learned. And sometimes, when I'm making coffee or reviewing billion-dollar deals, I think about my father's words. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. He was right, but he missed something important: integrity, compassion, and the courage to be yourself. Those are things nobody can take either.